Jim, how you doing today, Jimbo?
Jim's good to be here. Happy to be here for number one.
Jim. Gosh, thanks for coming, Jim. And Jim, what we're going to talk about today, before we even start, I know
Barry Manilow.
We got to refrain from saying Jim. We got to refrain from saying
Is that
Jim.
what we need to talk
Jim.
about?
Yeah,
Jim?
yeah, Jim. We got to refrain from saying that. Jim and I grew up together. We went to school together. Went to high school. Lost a little touch there for a while, and reunited and became friends. And then he introduced me to my wife. Thanks,
Wow.
Jim. Wow. Gosh, I'm tearing up already. Hey, but Jim, I catch a lot of flack for talking out against college a little bit. It's not like I'm talking out against it, Jim. I just feel like I wasted a lot of time and money, and not my money, my parents' money.
God bless him.
Yeah, God bless him. And I know your son Michael, who everybody dearly loved. He was a homecoming king.
Jim, homecoming king, 4-point GPA,
and decided not to go to college.
Nope. Jimmy had a pretty good scholarship to Belmont. And the day that I was supposed to really sign the papers to borrow the money for his tuition, he said, "Don't do it, Dad." And here was his rationale: I don't know what I want to do yet, and he always said college is an investment, and it's not a good investment if I don't know what I want to do. Speechless, Jim. I was speechless.
Wow.
I mean, how do you respond to that when your kid takes your word, Jim? This is going to happen. Your words. Here you go. And there's a lot of pressure on parents for their kid to go to college.
Yeah, I mean,
parental pressure.
There is that stigma nowadays that, hey, if you don't go to college, you know you're not going to make as much money, you're not going to be successful. I mean, that's huge now. I felt that way. I mean, I went right out of high school, Jim. I mean, I wasn't the best student all through high school. We know that. I remember I came over to your house because Jim, what'd you graduate? What was your GPA when you graduated? Not that matters.
It's been a long time ago.
Jim, it had to be close to 4.0 because Jim, I remember wanting to come over to your house to study because I knew you were the smart one in the class.
Jim, my GPA was what I remember is my GPA was higher than I thought it should have been, given how poorly I did in calculus, which I think reflects how bad I am at math. Like, I didn't understand how my GPA was that high when I think I got D's in calculus. Not my thing.
Really?
Yeah.
And you use calculus every day, don't you?
Jim, I wonder all the time, how much water does that pool hold?
I know, Jim. Jim, same thing with statistics in college. I mean, gosh darn. And I do have a college degree, and you know, I remember the ACTs.
Oh yeah,
we took the ACT.
Jim, I remember you taking the ACT.
What do you remember, Jim? He's laying his head on the table right now. Jim, I was tired, and I'm not sure. I think if I go back and look at my ACT scores, and do they still do the ACT? Do they still take the ACT?
Yeah.
High school seniors still take ACT.
ACT or SAT still used.
I mean, is there a more popular one than the other? Because I never took the SAT.
It depends on where you are in the country and what kind of a college you're going to go to. Typically, colleges in the Northeast, I understand, prefer an SAT score, but in the Midwest, regionally accredited universities, ACT seems to be preferred.
Okay.
I say that without any actual knowledge, by the way. It's just.
I mean, did you take the ACT?
I did.
Well, yeah, that's right. And I mean, what, 33? What'd you get, 33?
Yeah,
34?
no.
I mean, isn't 33 tops? You probably got like 38 or something like that.
I think I got like 27 or 28. And then as I was graduating, I took another test, I think the GMAT, to go in, Jim, because I have my master's degree. So I took another ACT-type test to get into my master's program.
Wow. Was that like an all-day test?
It felt like it.
Like what, 2 hours, 3 hours?
Yeah. And Jim, what I remember of that is, I'm sorry, I put my head down on the desk talking about you taking the ACT, by the way.
That's okay.
I got one of those preparation books, and I read enough of the prep book to know you couldn't use a calculator. Gosh, and there was one other thing that I'm like, hey, this is good to know. Because when I got into this room, and the proctor for the test said, Miss, there's a girl there with a calculator. You're not allowed to use that. You have to put it away. And I can't imagine the stress of planning to use the calculator and then finding out that I couldn't. Here's the other thing I learned. one of the test sections would be thrown out. It was essentially a section developed to build future test questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But they said that section would be noticeably more difficult than the other sections. So we started a section. I didn't know answer number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Closed my book and I took a little break, Jim. Little
This is to get into your master's.
little siesta.
This is
yeah.
how old were you when you got your master's?
No, the
Like
master-
right after you finished your undergrad?
No, I just took the test because I wanted to take the test while I still knew how to color in the little circles.
Yeah.
That's an
yeah.
important life skill.
Yeah, Jim, it is with the number 2.
Yeah, and so I wanted to take the test, anticipating getting my master's degree later. But I started my master's degree, and it took me 7 years to complete it.
Okay. Well, that's good, Jim. You got a master's.
Got a master's degree.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it means so much to my resume.
Yeah, and Jim, I do have a physical education degree, and I like to tell people that say, well, physical education, how hard can that be? Do you know the dimensions of a badminton court, Jim?
Jim, no.
Jim, I do. And Jim, it's not a birdie.
The birdie, it's a great thing.
Jim, it's a shuttlecock.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a shuttlecock. It's not really a birdie. I don't know how. I learned that in college, Jim. I sat through a semester in team sports, Jim, learning the dimensions of a badminton court, bowling, Jim, basketball. I learned all those things. Now, Jim, and I'm not, again, I don't want to take anything away from my college degree. I guess my point is that I think I wasted some definite time in some classes knowing that I would never use this stuff, sitting in a little desk in a room, knowing that there was going to be a test. I'm not a test taker. Jim, I'm not kidding you, Jim. If I combined, because my ACTs, my first time I took them, were so low. They were like, was there a mistake? So I had to, Jim, I had to take it again.
Yeah, you
And
got
I
to.
think
Jim had the opportunity to take it again. That's nice.
And I wish I was joking about this, but I think if I combine those two, Jim, I don't think it would go to 27. I don't think it would hit your 27 mark. It was that bad.
But here you are today. You own a business. You support your family, making a go of it.
Yeah, and thank God for my parents, because they did. Right before we started this, I called my mom, and I was like, hey, Mom, do you remember how much money you spent for me for a year for college? She's like, I'm not really sure. I'll ask Dad. And I said, she's like, why? Are you getting ready to send your kid? Are you thinking about your kids already? And I have a 4, 8, 11, 12, Jim. I'm sorry, I forgot. And a 13-year-old. And I'm like, no, Mom, I'm just wondering because Jim and I are going to do my first podcast on colleges and maybe how it's not for everybody and this and that. And she immediately texts back. She's like, well, how many people would go to your gym if they knew you didn't have a college degree? And I didn't respond back. She goes, you better think about, the podcast first. And I didn't respond back to her. I said, Mom, thanks, Mom. I love you, Mom. Thanks. But, Jim, I've been in business for 25 years, and I can count on this hand right here how many people asked me what my college degree was in. They didn't care. They wanted to come in here. They wanted a uplifting environment. They wanted to get in shape. They wanted somebody greeting them at the door and saying hello to them and saying goodbye and really taking a genuine interest in them. That's what they wanted.
So, Jim, where did you learn your customer service skills?
Wow, that's a good question. My father had a supermarket.
Yeah.
Growing up, you lived right down the street here.
Good store, Jim.
You shopped at Sure Save Supermarket.
That's a true story.
Where friendly people served friendly people. That was the logo, or that was his little tagline. Jim, I think there was a part of that ingrained in me as a child. I don't know. I think there's a genetic aspect.
Yeah.
Kind of like look at I know your children. Look at Michael. I could see his customer service, and he worked at my restaurant for me.
In fact,
customer
he'd like
service
a shirt.
was great.
He'd like a shirt if you had like an XL.
Yeah,
he wanted
yeah.
me to bring him one. True story.
A Jim's hot dog shirt.
He was wearing one, and then asked if there were still some around.
Wow.
I'm sorry for the disruption.
I tell you what, Jim, I'm gonna go to my screen printer and get a couple made just for him. I like him that much. But now I could see, not that Matthew's not into customer service, but I just see Michael's personality being more vibrant with the customer out front, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe Matthew would be like that in a setting the same thing.
Matthew's style is different, which is amazing because they came from the same place, raised by the same parents. But yeah, you're right, Jim. Matthew's stylistically is very different. Cares about people as much as Michael does, just expresses it differently.
Right.
And that's the reason I asked is because that, Jim, I look at the success in your business being a lot in your business skills, Jim, but your approach with people. You know, whether it was the gym or whether it was the hot dog place, you had an approach with people that that brought people to you. You know, they want to come to the gym to experience the environment as much as to get healthy. I mean,
Yeah.
there are several options to get healthy, and people come here because they're drawn to yours.
Well, I appreciate that, Jim. And for those of you that don't know, because you just mentioned gym, I owned a gym and a hot dog restaurant in the same sentence, Jim.
Was that
So
wrong?
The people,
Is that too much information?
so people that don't know that is, I did own a gym. I sold it because somebody wanted to buy it, and then I regretted it. And I had a 2-year non-compete where I thought, wow, let's open a hot dog cart, and it turned into a restaurant. And anyhow, once my non-compete was up, I got back in the gym business, and again, I love it. I learned more, back to the customer service question, I think I learned more out of college when I started to listen to tapes on how to win friends and actually start to read books that I was interested in.
Yeah.
How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, the 7 laws, or what's the one by Stephen Covey, the 7 habits of highly successful people. Yeah, I listened to that book in my car because, again, I did not like reading all through elementary, high school, and college. Again, I still am wondering how I do have a college degree since I don't like reading. But after I started to delve into those books that is delve a word?
I like it. It works for me.
Okay. Delve into those books that I really liked that were helping me, and I could see in the customer service business, being a personal trainer, into the gym business, this is going to help me immensely. And it was just firing me up and motivating me too.
Jim, it's interesting. I watched a video done by an educator who was challenging what she saw as our education system being geared towards feminine educational attributes. And so what she'd say is, we're not spending as much time in recess as would probably be beneficial to the kids. And the books that we choose for the kids to read are typically not the books that would be compelling to boys, like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I know 5th graders, boys would, no, not that book in particular. but her example was comic books. And go back to Michael, who probably way too long in his educational career would pull out Captain Underpants books because Captain Underpants books were funny. But when he had to read a series of books in the, I don't know what you'd call it, in the semester that he called Death, Despair, and Mayhem series, he would resist it. Mm-hmm. And so this lady is saying, if we gave the kids choices that were of interest to them, maybe we would get them to read more and to find a joy in reading.
Yeah. I mean, the Lighthouse Mystery. I can remember reading one book in elementary school. It was the Lighthouse Mystery. My brother, who was 2 years older than me, and my sister, who was 2 years younger than me, Jim, they were getting awards for reading books. I mean, they were reading, like, you know how you have to read so many books in a month? They'd have like 190 read, and I'd have like 2 read, and it was ridiculous. So I think that Jim, I mean, should everybody think that they need to go to college right out of high school?
Yeah.
Jim, what do you think? Come on, give me something.
Jim, on my way over here, what I considered is, with a sister who's got a PhD and works at Ohio State, with a daughter who's studying elementary education, middle school, McKenna, education, and with a master's degree myself, here's my thought, is we need to be more intentional about making our education choices. And I think we talk about pressure at the student level and at the parent level. There's pressure to feel successful. By being successful means going into college. But I just saw a cartoon a little bit ago where these 2 high school students were talking, and one was saying, gosh, I'm going to go to college for 4 years, and then I'm going to get a job as a like a sales rep, and I hope to make $40,000 a year. And this other student said, oh, well, I got a job as a welder, and I'm going to start making $50,000 next year. And the kind of disconnect is they value each other's choices. Where there's validity in the choice to be a welder, we need them. I mean, Jim, we do a commercial for the trades and the need for those in Findlay, Ohio. I mean, we need people to help build houses and to maintain houses so that everybody's safe. And we also need people who are going to go into college and get an education to do things like engineering. Gosh, with the Hurricane Harvey thing, when they said engineers came over from Exxon to help figure out how to get water supply in, I forget the name of the town, but they lost their water, and they called engineers over from Exxon.
Buford. I think it was Buford.
Buford, thank you. What a skill. What a skill to be able to say, yeah, I can help figure out how to do this. As we speak, they still don't have water, but at least there are people with the wherewithal to be able to do the math, if you would, to figure out how to get the water from where it is through a system where it can be purified and then out to people's homes.
Yeah,
God
right.
bless them. Same.
Those are engineers, and they need
Yep.
need a. There's state criteria. They need a college degree for that kind of stuff, right?
Jim, good question.
I mean, if you're a doctor, you need to go to med school. You need to do that. I mean, there is a place for college. I mean, right? Yeah.
Let me say yes, and then I would say from an intentional standpoint, if you're being intentional about it. But I also wonder about people's initiative. There seems to be some really high initiative individuals for whom college doesn't add value. Mm-hmm. Stephen Jobs, who were we just talking about? Richard Branson.
Yeah.
Richard Branson didn't finish high school and seems to be doing well, and frankly is providing employment for a lot of families in the businesses that he's created. And then I look at some other people who are high initiative and they know what they want and they're using college to get it. And then there's some people that are maybe in between there that could go either way. Maybe they benefit from college, or maybe they take a different approach. There was a day when apprenticeships were much stronger, and you could learn a trade through an apprenticeship. But let me segue a little bit and comment too that McKenna is student teaching right now. And it seems to me that the majority of what she's going to put to work in the classroom, she's learning through her student teaching, which is essentially an apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. The rest of her education is general, and they talk about theories, but Shelley Gilbert is showing McKenna how to apply what she's learned in a way that is going to benefit the students there.
Right, right.
And there's something to be said for that. I wonder if, like, doctors have residency. What's the differential? And I'm not a doctor. Bring Andrew Lane in here for a conversation. Dr. Andrew Lane.
Yeah.
What's the differential between medical school versus that year of residency in terms of applying what you know? Oh, the phone's ringing. You think that's Andrew? I'm sorry, Jim. The phone's not really ringing.
I know,
Caller,
Jim.
go ahead.
Jim, that's funny. Hey, gosh, I know, Jim. I mean, do you learn stuff out, like you say, her doing the student teaching right now? I mean, that is huge, just getting that experience. And what I always like to tell this story. I had a 25-year-old come in here and apply for a job one time. And he came in and, again, he shook my hand. It was a nice handshake, Jim. He looked me in the eye, introduced himself, and said, I'm Ed from the University of Findlay. I just graduated with a degree in strength and conditioning. He goes, I got my master's in exercise physiology. He went on to tell me that he was American ACE certified, NASM certified. He had all these certifications through the physical education, through strength and conditioning. And then he went on to say, you know what, though? He goes, rumor has it you're hiring. He said, before we go on here, Jim, I don't like to, train people early in the morning. I'm not an early bird, Jim. I like to train people at night. He goes, you know what? He goes, I don't like to use those treadmills over there too. I use all free weights with people, and I like to train more athletic people. I don't want to get into training older people. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I said, okay, thanks a lot. I'll let you know I'm not really looking for anybody. And Then little Jeff came in from Glenwood Junior High School, holding a gallon of water, excited. Came in, looking around the gym, said, are you Jim's Gym? My last gym was called Jim's Gym. People thought my name was Jim's Gym. He goes, are you, yeah, I'm Jim, Jeff. He goes, hey, my name's Jeff. He goes, I hear that you are hiring kids to clean your parking lot and you're giving them free memberships here at the gym. He goes, all I want to do with my life is be a personal trainer. He was holding a gallon of water and he said, hey, Jim, look at, he goes, I know the muscle's 78% water. He goes, I drink a gallon of this every day. He goes, I wake up with my dad in the morning in the basement. We lift weights. He goes, I eat chicken breast and broccoli, Jim. He goes, I know I'm going to gain a lot of muscle. He goes, I will clean the bathrooms here. I will clean your parking lot. He goes, I will do anything you ask for me. He goes, I just want to learn from you and I want to be a personal trainer. Enthusiastic, smiled, was excited. I would hire Jeff, eighth grade Jeff, any day over 25-year-old Ed with under the influence of NMA, negative mental attitude, that doesn't want to train this person, doesn't want to do that.
Right.
And any day.
What I
Jim.
don't want versus how can I help you?
Yeah, exactly.
And the passion, Jim, which maybe is a common trait of the Steve Jobs and Richard Bransons of the world, who, are going to overshoot any other education or credentialing needs that they might run into from another individual. I don't think Bill Gates finished college either.
No, I don't think so. No.
And so their passion, their love of what they're doing overshoots all the credentialing that somebody else can get, who is putting limitations on what they want to bring to the table because they don't want to get up early in the morning. Jim, really fine if he wants to narrowly identify the population that he wants to help train, more power to him. But his impact on the world is also going to be narrowly defined versus the approach of somebody else who says, gosh, what do people need? And how can I contribute to that? And that's independent of education. I think it's to your point.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve Jobs, he was in college and he dropped out because he was taking all these classes that meant nothing to him. So what do you do when you take class you don't pay for it? What's it called?
Audit.
Audit. So he started auditing.
Yeah.
Just the classes that he loved and knew would help him reach his goal.
Jim, what I read was Steve Jobs dropped into college. He would go to classes he wasn't even registered for because he thought it was interesting. And if it was interesting and he could learn, he stayed. And if it wasn't interesting, he bailed.
Yeah.
Jim, like on that, the thing we were talking about was, I forget what it's called, massively available online classes. I think MOOC classes. And with the internet now, kids can they can drop into classes from Yale or Harvard or wherever and learn something, the degree to which it's of interest to them. And if they can learn that and then apply it, maybe it's much more compelling than sitting through a semester of a class learning a theory and not having the opportunity to apply it. Or maybe not even have the interest or understand how to translate the theory into ways that can be applied.
I know with the internet nowadays, you can sell, if you're motivated, you can get self-taught online.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, you can get so much, there is so much information at our fingertips right now, so much more than 40 years ago.
And Jim, the kids know it. My kids will go out on YouTube and just say how to, and which I know is a huge trend right now for Google. I think top two Google words: best and how to, because people are in the supermarket and they want to know. Example again I read was, what's the best toothbrush? And they don't ask themselves that question until they're in the aisle faced with 100 different kinds of toothbrushes that they Google best toothbrush and then will make their selection. And that's the other thing people are saying is, gosh, how to attach a trailer to a truck hitch. Mm-hmm. It's a true story.
Yeah.
By the way.
Oh, is that what you had to figure out one time,
yeah,
Jeff?
and
Okay,
it was pretty helpful. It's all in the grease, by the way. The grease was the issue.
Okay. Let's talk college debt here. Let's talk debt.
Do we have to?
Let's talk. There's more college debt in this country than there is credit card debt, and you cannot file bankruptcy for college debt. They say the average. I just Googled this. The average person coming out of college today, the average is $40,000 debt they have, and they're getting jobs that don't pay $40,000 a year, or even close to that. Jim, what do you think about that?
let's go back to Michael. Because part of the conversation we had that day when he said, Dad, I don't know what I want to do. And I think it's too much money to spend on college. It's an investment. I said, we would like to help you get a leg up. And he said, well, gosh, will you buy me a house? Because having a house without any payment, that's also a really good leg up. Pretty practical kid. Which is another argument that he made, and that was if I'm going to have this kind of debt because of my desire to have college, or to get a degree, there are choices that are already going to be made for me because I'm going to have to. There are a lot of have-tos in my life so that I can pay off that debt. Versus what he's doing now, which feels like he has a world of options before him, fewer have-tos, if you will, because he hasn't burdened himself with that load.
He ended up going to barber school, right?
He went to barber school. He was, I would describe it as recruited out of barber school and into this kind of very nice, I don't hate to say cater to the celebrities, but I think they probably did cater to the celebrity class a little bit and learned a lot from them about what he wanted and what he didn't want to do with his future. And again, because he didn't have the debt, he was able to make different choices. So he ended up at a smaller salon.
Yeah, because I can remember, thank God for my parents. And again, they paid for 4 years of my college. Actually, Jim, I think they paid for 4.5 years of my college. And then my fifth year, which I only have a bachelor's, my fifth year, they're like, you know what, Jim, you're on your own here. So I had to take a loan out and pay for my last year of college. And it was like, I remember it was like $68 a month for 10 years I had to pay. I couldn't imagine if I had to, those other 4 years, 4.5 years, that getting out of college, what I'd be paying on. I'd maybe still be paying for it.
Right. Jim, versus taking that money and investing that money, and then 10 years later, what's it worth, versus borrowing it now and then paying the interest over time. Imagine investing and getting the interest over time.
Right. And the private schools in the United States, $36,000 a year, the average.
Yeah.
$36,000. The state school is $10,000 a year. And education is ridiculously expensive. And I just listened to a podcast where they say it's because the government is subsidizing these loans so the colleges can charge more.
Mm-hmm.
Colleges can increase their rates because, hey, these kids are getting loans. And nowadays, the kids are like, well, shoot, let's go to Europe for the summer. I got this loan instead of working all summer long trying to pay these debts down. Because back, 30, 40, 50 years ago, our parents would go to college and work in the summer and pay their college as they went.
Because you could.
Because you could.
Right.
Because you could. Yeah.
Yeah. And Jim, you talk about the tuition, but Jim, with a handful of kids to think about, you had room and board on top of that, and a $10,000 tuition at a state school plus $10,000 room and board is pretty significant. You're looking at $20,000 a year. So $80,000 if the kid can finish in 4 years. And McKenna's program is by design 4.5 years. But God love her, she's taking 18 credit hours a semester so that she can finish in 4 years.
Wow. 18 credit hours.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She's owning it.
I remember in college, what's the minimum? 12. I'll take 12. Well, Jim, you have 14. Drop Introduction to Basketball. That was a 2-hour class. Drop it. I want 12.
Jim, did that help your basketball game? All the class you took on basketball, did it help your game?
Jim, it didn't help my game too much.
No.
Jim, no, not at all. Jim, I did, and I did go into college for all the wrong reasons. Sure, I was like, okay, I was good I remember Mr. Yater, Wilson Vance, 6th grade, my physical education teacher, I did 13 pull-ups. And he said, wow, that's the most pull-ups of anybody in this school, 13 full. And he made me go all the way down and all the way up. And I went home like, Mom, I want to be a physical education teacher.
Seriously?
Yes, I went home and I'm going to do it. So I wanted all through high school, physical education again. Squeaked by in high school. In fact, I have from K through 12, my mom kept a picture of me when I was in kindergarten all through 12th grade. She put every grade card in there too. I have this little booklet at home. It starts out fairly well, Jim, but I tell you what, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, I told my kids, you guys, just look at the pictures. Don't look at the grade cards. It was ugly. I don't know how I got in college. I don't know how I got accepted. I got accepted to University of Toledo for a quarter and really tried to study. I mean, really tried. And, Jim, it didn't work. I took 3 classes, Jim, and one came out that transferred over to Findlay. When I went to Findlay, and I took a year off. I took a year off after that, worked for my dad, and then thought, oh, boy, don't want to work for Dad. Don't want to work in the supermarket, my business my whole life. So went back to the University of Findlay. And it was nice because it was a lot smaller university. So I did get more personal attention. But quickly I found out, hey, this is the party life, man. Let's party. And I partied, Jim. And I squeaked by class after class. And I'll tell you what got me through. Is actually waking up, because I was never like lazy where I wanted to just sleep all day long. And I went to class and I looked at the teacher and I smiled and I actually tried to nurture that teacher. And if I got a C and passed that class, I was ecstatic, Jim. I remember taking statistics, which, how many times, did you ever take statistics?
Yes.
Jim, the bell curve. I remember the bell curve?
Jim, somebody's got to be at the other end of the tail.
What does that mean, Jim?
A statistics class, Jim, normal curve would have like the bulk of the people are here.
And you shaded an area in?
Yeah. And
Jim,
then,
I shaded the area in 3 times. So I had to take statistics 3 times, Jim. I wasted my parents' money 3 classes, Jim.
wow.
And do I ever use statistics? That was thousands of dollars that I wasted.
Jim, I'd ask you what the chances are of taking statistics 3 times, but you can't tell me.
Anyhow, I don't know why I'm going off on this, Jim, but gosh darn it, man.
All right, Jim, so let me ask you this. And
I would have loved my parents saying, "Hey, Jim, just take this $40,000 and let's think about what we're going to do. Let's get a plan." I don't know. Maybe the experience was. I'm sure I learned a lot through that 5.5 years of college. I took summer class too, and it still took me that long, Jim.
Jim, there's something that strikes me about your story, and that is that your story is a journey. Talking about your journey, discovering what worked for you and what didn't work for you. So here's my question. What did you excel at in college?
You know what I excelled at, Jim? I remember, and I forgot the teacher's name, but it was a class where we had to get in a group. And we had to figure something out. And I forgot there was like 7 or 8 of us in a group. And as we were discussing this in this group, the teacher was walking around, and she would stop by each group and just listen to us. And she would, and I guess I was asking people, what do you think about that? And let's do this and that and this. And after class, she pulled me aside. She goes, I walked around the classes and listened to all the groups. She goes, Jim, you've got good leadership skills. She goes, you can lead groups. He goes, hey, I could see you in a role like that. Jim, I took that, and it really was a nice compliment. And I thought, leadership. I mean, so I can take people and then lead them. Jim, I started having parties, Jim. Jim, we had a house right off the campus, Jim. So it wasn't on campus, Jim, but you could have stepped 10 feet over and it was on campus. So I could have parties and the campus couldn't do anything about it. And Jim, when people came to my parties, Jim, I made sure that they had an awesome time. I made sure that they all had drinks. I made sure that the good music was playing. I made sure that everybody was happy, that there wasn't a line for the bathroom. If there was, hey, come around here, ladies, and go to the bathroom back here where my sister's place was. And I had 4 other roommates, and if I was out of town and they threw a party at my house, it wasn't their party. It wasn't my 4 roommates. Hey, Steffen's having a party. So I'd come back from a weekend, and my buddies at OU, and I'd be like, "Hey, Steffen, great party this weekend." Well, I wasn't here. Well, you had a party. You have all the good parties. So I got that reputation, maybe unfortunately, for having good parties. But I'm kind of joking about this, but I'm really kind of not. I took that and took it into my gym business and made sure everybody that came into my gym had a good time and were acknowledged and felt important.
Jim, you read my mind. And because, and I really didn't know what you were going to say, But listening to your story, that's the journey. And kudos to Jim. Shout out to your professor at university for recognizing how you were behaving in that small group and sharing that with you. I mean, here's some positive coaching from a teacher that impacted your life trajectory, Jim. Bam.
Yeah.
And then go back to the teacher who recognized you for your pull-ups. Jim, you put together, again, Mr. Yater impacting a life choice for you that sets you off in a way. So really kudos to the teachers where you combine the physical, your physical abilities with your leadership abilities to, and Jim, your empathy with people to make sure that people are having fun, being sensitive to how far you can push people and how to engage people in a way that's compelling to them. Maybe it's not everybody, because maybe everybody didn't want to come to your parties in college.
Yeah.
But what strikes me is it's an investment. But in your case, it sounds like it's an investment and you spent time going to classes, but really where the rubber hit the road was where you were putting those two missions, physical fitness and caring about people, to practice at your parties.
Jim, could I have put that in 2 years, though? I could have taken all those classes.
Definitely.
You sent me an article last night, how they're trying to, right? How they're
Yep.
trying to maybe cut the time down. Maybe not 4 years where you're spending all this money and all this time and maybe trying to learn this stuff in a lot shorter period of time.
Yeah. Oh, Jim, hard to argue. If we could cut that in half and find other ways to accelerate kids discovering themselves, because something I really struggled with was 4 years of college for a kid to find themselves. I think, gosh, can't you go to work at McDonald's and find yourself?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and contribute to society. Yeah, I don't know how you feel about that example, but yeah.
Jim, I like that example.
There are a lot of different things that you can do to find yourself while you're contributing to society, as opposed to being in college kind of floating, if that's the case. Now, Jim, somebody could be listening and they're busting their butt through college. Yeah, do it, and more power to you. Make the most of that. Otherwise, it's a process of figuring out who you are.
Yeah, and I don't want this to be a bash on college thing, Jim. Again, you have a college degree, you have a master's degree, I have a college degree. Could I have taken a different path? Could there have been somebody there in high school and saying, "Hey, Jim, listen, take it." They call them gap years now, I think.
Yep.
Take that year off before you go to college. If you decide to go to college, go to college. Take that year off before you get your master's. You can find stuff to do because, again, so many people are going into college, getting their liberal arts degree, getting out of college, having a huge debt, and changing, picking up garbage or working at McDonald's, which is fine. You know what I'm saying? That's a whole nother podcast. I'm going to call it the Burger King Project, how you can go into, with people skills and enthusiasm, going into a Burger King and just working your way up to district manager. That's another podcast, though. All the power to you if you are working at one of those jobs, but boy, oh boy, good luck paying that $40,000,
Right.
$50,000, $60,000 debt off, living with your mom and dad, which nothing's wrong with living with your mom and dad. You can live with your parents. Can't you, Jim? You got Matthew's living with you guys, right?
To a point.
Okay. To a point. Hey, real quick here. You talked about how teachers, and that can, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but how teachers can say stuff to you and impact your life. McKenna going into education, I think that's, and again, this is another podcast how I think teachers should get paid a lot more money, make it more competitive. Anyhow, I remember Mrs. I hope she I don't want to make you feel bad, Mrs. Hurt, if you're listening, but in second grade, I knew I was already in the lower reading group. I knew that my reading skills were not good. God rest Paul Murtis' soul, because he died of lung cancer a couple years ago. Did you know this? Did you know Paul Murtis? I'm sorry to just throw that at you right now. Jim, remember Paul Murtis?
Yeah.
He died of lung cancer about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Jim, he was very smart. He was tutoring me on how to read in second grade. So I was in this little circle with Mrs. Hurt, with like 7 other kids that couldn't read very good either. So she made each of us read a little paragraph, Jim, when she got to me, she was putting stars on kids' heads. She was like this. Like if you did good, she'd put a full star on your head. Jim, I read my part. Jim, she put her finger on my forehead. Jim, I got a freaking half star. Jim, I was already in the low reading group, and she gave me a half star on my forehead. Jim, that hurt. That hurt. Thank God for Mr. Yater telling me I could do a lot of pull-ups. And Jim,
Yeah.
this is your route 4 years later. And thank God for my teacher in college that said, you're a good leader. I don't know
Jim-
where that half star would have got me in that low reading group already.
But,
Okay, sorry.
And Jim,
Sorry.
Jim, how many minutes a day do you spend?
You just said Jim 3 times before you said something.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's okay.
then let me just do a call out to Mardell Clemens, 9th grade communicative arts teacher, because I just did a webcast for a talent acquisition organization, and went back and listened to it, and I counted the number of times I said "you guys," and and I believe the numbers were 15, 20, and 25. And I counted those because Mardell Clemens taught me to. And I'm pretty sure she would have said in a really loving way, because she really affected me in a positive way. She would have said, gosh, Jim, in 20 minutes, I'm surprised you had time to say anything else. I mean, she had that kind of power and
Oh, that's
conviction.
beautiful.
But Jim, only once, I'm not going to say it again. There's a lot to unpack in what you just shared in terms of the power and really the responsibility of a teacher. Because you remember this from the 2nd grade, getting a half star, albeit on your forehead, which also, I mean, because I've heard this phrase used, there's a lot to unpack in that. There's a lot to unpack in that. Half star on your forehead plus.
I was already in a low reading group, Jim, and I was getting half stars. You know?
Okay, so plus the Palmerdis thing.
I'm sorry about throwing
Jim,
that at you. Darn it.
How many minutes a day do you spend reading today?
Well, here's the thing, Jim. I did start reading when I was 26, and I really dug into a lot of books for about 10 years, and then of course the internet comes along, Jim.
Oh,
so
yeah,
now I'm
yeah.
listening. Now I'm listening to my books. And
Right.
Jim, you listen to a lot of
Oh,
books.
love
You-
audiobooks.
I do
Love
too.
audiobooks.
Jim, because you can do other stuff.
Yes,
you
can.
don't have
You
to
can
just
drive.
sit there.
You can drive and get the book.
Yeah, you can. Anyhow. All right, Jim. So, again, I don't want people to be listening to this saying, well, Jim says you don't have to go to college. It's dumb. I'm not saying it's dumb. There's a lot of value in it. I think that I want to get it out of the kids that are in high school. There's stigma that if you don't go to college, you're not going to be a success. And again, success is a whole nother podcast. What's the definition of success? I don't want them to take that away from here. I'm just saying that I'm huge into trade school right
Yep.
now. I love trade school. I've listened to some college professors that are like, I mean, some college professors or ex-college professors are saying, oh my gosh, it could almost do more harm in some cases than good. You know, leaving college with a school debt, not being passionate about what you're learning, sitting in a classroom at a desk where you're just like hating life. Again, I think it's where you're at, what kind of a person you are. Like you, what did you say about that earlier? Like something about if you go to college, there's different ways you can people can benefit.
Yeah, I think so, Jim. I want to circle back to say it's about your intention.
Intent. That's what you're
And
talking about, Jim.
being intentional
Yes.
about the choices that you're making. Because, Jim, we went to school with a guy named Dan Sterling. Dan also supports his family, makes a great living. I'm pretty sure he's happy. And John Fenimore. I went to St. Michael's all the way through with John Fenimore. And John Fenimore works at Cooper, supports his family, loves life, and contributes to society.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to be fair, maybe both of them went to college. I don't think so, but it never came up because what we're talking about is connecting at the human level, Jim, which is what we talked about you succeeding in that got you where you are today. That and your ability to do 13 pull-ups.
Yeah.
You show me
Jim.
what a pull-up is later, maybe?
Jim, I'll show you what a pull-up is. I can
Thanks.
do like 20 now, nonstop, Jim. By the way, yeah.
All the way, the way.
Yeah, all the way. And you know, you probably don't remember Ricky Willie, and that was actually his name, Ricky Willie. Jim, this is right after I got the half star from reading. I think this was in 3rd grade. I was at Ricky Willie's birthday party, his 9th birthday party. I was in his basement, and his mom actually looked at me at the birthday party and said, Jim, do you pump iron? And I remember saying, what does that mean? She goes, do you lift weights? So like, I think she saw something in me
Wow.
early on, like,
Wow.
wow, Jim, maybe, it was just those genetic makeup. Hey, you can lift weights and you can run around basketball, but I heard you get half stars because you can't read for crap.
But
You know?
you know what, Jim? Here's the other story. Intentionality, recognizing what you've been given, and then being intentional about what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
Instead of forcing yourself in some mold that doesn't fit you, and potentially being less than you could have been, less happy than you could have been otherwise.
And let's face it, 17, 18, 19-year-old, Jim, I was, those decisions you're making to go to college, our brain, my brain wasn't functioning that well, I don't think. I was dumb. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to say I was dumb, but those are big decisions to take that kind of debt at that age. I mean, I like to say to my people here, don't ask me how old I am. I'm not old. I've lived 48 years.
Nice.
I mean, so what if I'm going to live 98 years? So what if you wait until you're 24 to go to college because you weren't sure what you wanted to do and you tried this out and you tried that out, or when you're 27 and go to college and you can learn it at home or learn it online and find something that you're really passionate about.
And Jim, I know there are universities that will allow seniors to attend for no fee.
Yeah.
Kudos to lifelong learners, Jim, whether they're reading books in the morning themselves or listening to podcasts and taking action, right? Putting what they're learning into practice, or whether you're 65 years old and decide you want to go take a college class.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Jimbo. Okay, Jim, we're going to wrap it up here. We're going to wrap it up, man.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, and thanks for coming in and talking to me. I appreciate it. I know we've had these conversations before, and I'm glad that we used, your son, Michael. We're gonna get him listening to this podcast.
Yep.
So, all right, thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.